Coming up in this episode...
Tom Cruise in this movie, he hates war, yet he's really good at it. It's a rollicking good epic.
Surely this film would have been better if Tom Cruise had died at the end.
It's Legends of the Fall in dressing gowns.
Basically paint the samurai as having this kind of purely noble, altruistic rebellion.
Greatly ahistorical.
It's a fallacy.
And Billy Connolly gets killed far too early.
Have you ever had a shite in a kimono? Welcome back to the Historical Movies Podcast. My name is Ross, I'm an editor, and I'm joined by my brother Bryce, Professor of Modern History at Liverpool Hope University, and historical scriptwriter. Bryce, hello.
Hello there.
And in today's episode, we're covering The Last Samurai, Bryce, about Nathan Algren, the American Civil War veteran who in 1876 is sent to Japan to help bring about the Meiji Restoration, that's the modernization and industrialization of Japan, but who ends up fighting for the other side when he comes into contact with the samurai culture he was sent to destroy. As we covered, Bryce, I don't think there's any better place to start with this incredible movie. It's going to take a lot of picking to pieces than with the end, which I saw the end of this movie. I very much enjoyed the battle scene. And then we've got this ridiculous ending where Tom Cruise basically doesn't die at the end, which I think the film would have been 10 times better if he had have died. But I've written a little piece to summarize the end of this movie. Nathan Algren, seemingly the only man left standing of the entire rebellion that he's a part of, and the only survivor of a suicide charge, returns the fallen hero Katsumoto's sword to the emperor, who, moved by their honor and sacrifice, has a change of heart and rejects the corrupt modernization of Japan foisted upon him by his advisors. Cruise then returns to the sleepy village where he spent most of the movie having some kind of profound conversion to spirituality, seemingly to finally get his leg over a woman who he himself widowed but a few months earlier. That's the ending of this movie, ladies and gentlemen. And I thought that surely this movie, Bryce, is better if he had followed what this whole movie, to me, appears to be about, which is the honor of the samurai code and the losing of the old traditional ways and the badness of some aspects of modernization. Surely this film would have been better if Tom Cruise had died at the end.
Yeah, even if he was just severely wounded, he could have ritually disemboweled himself on said sword.
Seppuku. Yeah, he should have done that.
It's. I think it follows the trajectory of a lot of similar movies from the 90s and the noughties. Dances with Wolves, Kevin Costner sprang to mind.
Well, this is the third time we've had Edward Zwick on. He's the director of this. We've done Legends of the Fall. That's a legendary episode. If you're listening, listeners, that's a great one to get tuned into. I did Glory with Chad Robinson, and now we're here with The Last Samurai. This is a man, Bryce. This is the director who's not afraid of melodrama.
Hang on, what's the second one? Glory.
Glory, I did with Chad. You weren't on that.
Right,
you weren't on that episode.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I wasn't. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say, yeah, this is a director who really lathers it on thick, as you would say. He doesn't mess around when it comes to forcing emotions into your eyeballs.
Yeah, and in terms of historical accuracy, he was quite heavily criticised for his adaptation of Defiance, more recent movie set in sort of Belarusia during the sort of partisan campaign in World War II. Did you see that with Daniel Craig?
I haven't seen it, but it's listed. We've got it on the list to do for the podcast someday.
Heavily criticised, I believe, by some sections of Polish/Belarusian opinion for wanton inaccuracies, which I believe has been subject of somewhere he manages to simplify and sentimentalize the whole Meiji Restoration here.
Time for a very short interruption. It's Ross here. Thanks very much for listening on YouTube. Don't forget to check out all of our other episodes, and we'd love to hear from you, so leave us a comment. And any sharing or liking or subscribing you can do would really help the podcast. So thanks a lot. Yeah, let's get in. Well, I want to explain why, in the course of this podcast, why this, my opening little summary of the end of this movie is so ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Why I thought it was so ridiculous. And I suppose a good way to get into that is we jump straight into the history, which is fascinating and also quite complex, I found, Bryce. But I'm not that tremendously well versed in Japanese history. But basically, when this movie is set in the late 19th century, we're dealing with feudal Japan, which is then basically being modernized. Yeah. And this Meiji Restoration, which happened from 1868 onwards, restoring the emperor to direct rule, which is something that didn't happen since the 12th century in Japan, as far as I read. And they are adopting Western military, economic, and political models. And there's basically a rebellion in 1877 called the Satsuma Rebellion against this modernization.
Yes, it's a kind of autocratic modernization process, and well, I suppose you could say, for all its cruelty, etc., does result in some kind of stunning successes, doesn't it? At the turn of the 20th century, for the Japanese,
What do you mean? What successes?
like Russo-Japanese War, for example. But yeah, we've got this process, haven't we? Of Tom Cruise's character is the white savior. I mean, he's supposed to be based upon a French military figure, isn't he? Who helped them?
Yeah, Jules Brunet, who fought, but he fought in a war called the Boshin War, which happened, I think, 10 years before the events in this film. That's a Japanese civil war, I understand. But
Yeah,
no American officer ever fought with the samurai. I should mention that now. But he is inspired by a French military officer who fought 10 years previous to the events in this movie.
and I suppose that is a little bit problematic in itself, isn't it? Because like I say, a lot of these 90s noughties kind of dare I say white savior movies. Oh God, I hate war, but I'm really good at war, and I'm a militarist, and but somehow I'm gonna have a sort of anachronistic empathy with the inferior races, and my goodness, the notions of civilization and barbarism I've been inured in are actually collapsed. And hey, I'm just like you.
It's the perfect role for Mel Gibson, this movie. I mean, we've just turned it into the Edward Zwick podcast by covering 3 of his films. But I can hear Mel angrily tapping on the door saying, I would have been perfect for this, although perhaps a little bit too old in
It's very
2003.
much that 90s,
Yeah.
period again of that sort of, American, I suppose, 90s golden era, just won the Cold War. But at the same time, let's assuage all our kind of white liberals kind of race/colonial guilt. And let's all die together, man.
Well, yeah, except he doesn't die at the end. But the point I think I also want to bring up about the samurai cast, this has been talked about in Japanese reviews of this movie, that they basically paint the samurai as having this kind of purely noble, altruistic rebellion
Nonsense.
against the modernizing forces.
Nonsense.
But the samurai were made up variously 5 to 10% of Japanese society. Which they were a privileged elite of Japanese society. This is in a period, of course, of feudal lords. So they're serving the daimyo, the feudal lord. And the samurai have hereditary rights to stipends or land incomes. So they're like the sort of nobility of Japan, as far as I understand it. They are prohibited from commerce and farming, but they also have privilege in the fact that they are allowed to sort of monopolize positions in government. So this is this sort of semi-noble class in Japanese society. And the idea that they were just rebelling to restore the old way has been questioned, because basically they were rebelling because they were losing class stature, weren't they, Bryce?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we're back to what's his name, Zwicky or Zwick?
Edward Zwick.
Zwick's like simplification of. I mean, it's very similar to Legends of the Fall, isn't it? It's like the kind of. If only we could, just retreat from modernity and get back to the simpler, purer, more noble ways. The ways, without ideology, the ways of nobility and honor amongst men, which of course conveniently sidesteps. I don't know. Is that a sort of? I don't know. Is it a kind of extreme libertarianism creeping through with Vic here? Or either way, it sidesteps the fact that the samurai were an exploitative caste. They weren't just these sort of noble types walking around in with ponytails and in their dressing gowns.
Top knots.
He says while recording this in a silk dressing gown.
Yeah, but at least you haven't got a top knot.
Yes, or feudal privileges, which don't exist in Liverpool. I'm glad to say. And so yes, it's a gross simplification, isn't it, of a quite complex period of Japanese history. And again,
but
are we going to, we've discussed this many, many times, haven't we? You know, can you can you be like very faithful to the sort of multiple kind of cultural class dimensions there? I mean, eventually you've got to bow to what the audience wants, and as you say, that comes through in the ending, doesn't it? Because instead of dying on the battlefield, the last stand, we've got to have the ridiculous, culminating scene, which I think your favourite critic Roger Ebert was very critical of, although he really liked the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, Roger's not infallible, Bryce. I mean, he gave this 3.5 out of 4.
He's far from infallible,
But he
actually.
said,
May God.
but he said basically they cheated us with this ending, which I completely agree with. But I want to say why, because they cheat us with the idea, first of all, that the emperor was sort of he's being corrupted by these advisors, and he's not really in charge. He's sort of this aloof noble, and he rejects the corruption. And on the other side, the samurai cast of this, presumably the Satsuma Rebellion, which happened in 1877, they rejected all of the new ways, and they went back to this pure form of Buddhism or whatever it is. They were fighting the rebel samurai in this period during the rebellion. Were
Shinto, is it not
fighting with modern
Shintoism?
technology. Sorry, Shintoism. I apologize, but they were fighting with modern technology, with rifles and gunpowder.
Yeah.
And in fact, in their final stand, the reason why they were eviscerated is because they ran out of ammunition. So the idea that this sort of samurai cast that we see in this movie, I know Tom Cruise goes to this wellness retreat basically in the mountains and discovers himself. They live this simplistic lifestyle. That's not really true, even
No,
of this Satsuma Rebellion. So
yeah.
it's not fair, because we've talked about this many times, that Hollywood movies have to paint things in purely black and white, so we get this uplifting contrast between goodies and baddies, which gives us all a sort of endorphin hit when we watch it. But it's not true of either side. This movie, it's completely it's a fallacy.
No, but I would say though, at the same time, like, it's a rollicking good epic of a movie. You know, like, what do you expect of an epic? It's going to have to, collapse some of those boundaries of truth in some ways. I'll come back to my original point though, and like the whole sort of white savior issue with sort of 90s noughties movies. In like, this is in some ways it's like Legends of the Fall, when Brad Pitt, this like untamable spirit, goes on his like crazy gap year and is like pictured waking up with like 30 women in a sort of
And a zebra or something.
kind of like biology defying orgies and smoking like inordinate amounts of opium, and it's a similar kind of thing, isn't it? Like you say, Tom Cruise wellness retreat. It's almost like, guess what happened on my gap year, and oh no way, you became a samurai, and
You grew your hair long, and
partook in the Meiji restoration, and and you grew your hair long, and that's the problem here. And as we say, coming back to the historical reality, you know, samurai quite like other pretty reactionary groups, like the Cossacks, highly romanticized, yet really, are they deserving of the kind of adulation? Probably not, when we look at the kind of class dynamic. Although, again, I don't want to kind of simplify Japanese history, but I suppose what I'm getting at here is, who can deny a certain satisfaction, actually, in seeing these ridiculous ponytailed anachronistic macho freaks get minced to pieces by machine guns at the end?
You mean anachronistic? But yeah. You mean the actors in this movie?
No, I mean the samurai. Yeah, I mean
the samurai. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's always this. I mean, it strikes a chord with things like Star Wars, where it's basically the same thing, isn't it? Star Wars, I always think, is the same modernization story about going back to the old ways and Jediism against this crushing imperial force.
There's a lot of
mixed with World War II, and that's basically the plot for
if you think about
Star Wars.
The Eastern martial arts and that sort of supposed nobility of tradition, there's a lot of this afoot in 90s noughties popular culture, isn't there? There's a certain fascination there, isn't there? Understandably, because it's a fascinating culture.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the culture is. I mean, we don't have a problem with the culture. We have a problem with the way it's been, portrayed in many ways in this movie. Now, I'm not going to get on my high horse and say they shouldn't make movies like this, but I think once you appreciate why it's badly handled, you might understand, why it's such an impressive culture more than this
Yeah,
film will
because
give you.
some of the somersaults of, even if you, and of course there's a certain beauty and allure to the notion of, the more rustic, noble ways before the modern world, and the apparatchiks and the bureaucrats and
Short form media and Facebook
exactly
and all of
got
that.
hold of us. The notion of like the honourable man. It explains the Viking myth fascination as well. There's a certain fascination there, but within this movie, the somersaults of the noble and virtuous code are ridiculous, which essentially boil down to, I killed your husband, so now I must you. And
Well, yes. Well, I've got a list of cliches, motifs, and problematic things in this movie. Would you like to? Shall I reel
I
them off
would
for you?
love to hear.
Well, one thing we really do have to bring up, number one, the great man theory.
Yeah.
This film, the great man theory of history, that is. This film opens with the line in voiceover, opening line: Japan was made by a handful of brave men, which is, as we've talked about on this podcast, relentlessly. Bryce, why is that wrong? The great man theory of history.
Well, I mean, it's not always wrong, but I suppose if that's your theory of history, then you just go read Thomas Carlyle and go and watch Wagnerian operas full of Germanic heroes, and watch Marvel movies, because that's essentially the idea that every so often we need a great man to it's a kind of Bismarckian notion of
Is it?
unshackled from the fetters of the economic and social conditions will prove and cleanse everything and make everything right. And well, quite frankly,
Yeah,
we've seen where that ended up, haven't we? With
multiple times. Yeah.
I don't want to reduce it to
Let's
Hitler, but classic.
we've got a white main character tortured by his part in genocide, war as hell
He hate
trope.
Russ Tom Cruise in this movie. He hates war, but yet he's really good at it.
The simplification, romanticization of samurai culture, and the simplification of the Meiji Restoration, the veneration of hereditary emperor in this movie, hereditary status, the focus on the nuclear family. Of course, he has to bring back. This is a Hollywood movie, Bryce, from the 90s ilk. He has to get back to the nuclear family at the end of this. He has to basically get back to the wife and kids so that we can end the movie and everything is as it should be. The bounce back ability I've written of the main character, that scene where he's getting beaten the shit out of by one of the samurai and he just keeps getting up and they're like, oh, okay, so he can't fight, but I respect his bounce back ability. The patronizing veneration of traditional Japanese spiritualism, all the stuff about fighting with no mind we've got, which it's not explained, doesn't mean anything. We don't go into any of the Shintoism. It's just this sort of, as you said, like classic, it's popular in the 90s. Oh, it's like, it's Orientalism. I don't know. It's some spirituality of it. I've got a question for you here. If this story had been told entirely from a Japanese perspective, then with no American protagonist, would it have been a better movie, but less accessible to global audiences?
Yes, because I think okay, so you've got a scene where because this is a Hollywood movie, it has to doff its cap to liberal inclusivity, even though it's depicting a people and a culture for whom that very notion is anathema. For example, Japanese men do not help carrying stuff, says the love interest to Tom Cruise when he very honourably carries her bundle for her.
Yeah.
Um, well, I'm not Japanese, right? So it's like, look here. It's the post Cold War American liberal savior is creeping in here. Had this been Japanese, are you going to get that? Probably not. Probably get something sort of actually more kind of sexist and aggressive, but probably more true to real life. But yes, certainly less accessible.
I just want to finish our history roundup. So I was very interested to find out, because this film is called The Last Samurai. I understand, actually, the makers of this film meant that in the plural sense, as in, the plural of samurai is samurai, but it would be called The Last Samurais. It's not actually about It's not actually about Katsumoto.
That's really funny. Oh well, because there is a debate, isn't there, of Who is the last samurai? Is it Tom
Well,
Cruise or is
yeah.
it Katsumoto?
Well, yeah, in this movie, but I mean, in real history, there's a guy called Saigo Takamori. Have you looked him up? He was the leader of this Satsuma rebellion, which is depicted
Is
in
he
this
the last
movie.
samurai?
He's the last samurai. He died at the Battle of Shirayama, leading. I think basically this seems to be basically shown in this movie. He led 500 samurai against the Imperial Japanese army of around 30,000. He used gunpowder and modern military technology that I've touched on. He's mortally wounded by a gunshot shell, and then his second in command carries him down a hill where he commits seppuku, ritual
Yeah,
suicide, which we see in this
yeah,
movie, opening your guts up as someone chops your head
yeah.
off. And then his second in command, who's done this, leads a suicide charge downhill into the gunfire, and the rest of the samurai were killed in this charge. So actually, we've just spent the last 20 minutes beating this movie around the head with a stick of historical accuracy. Actually, the scenes of battle, or the battle at the end in this movie, is, in broad strokes, relatively historically accurate.
Well, as one of the quotes in this movie, no, I'm not going to do a dodgy Japanese voice here, but
Please don't.
even the samurai are not a match for the mighty howitzer. And
Indeed.
another, that brings us to the script. I mean, my goodness, there's a few
A few clangers.
few prize pieces there, isn't there? Anyway, please go
on. Yeah, we've also talked about the controversy of this movie. I've basically got a quote here, which I think perfectly summarizes it. Makoto Rich, who's was the Tokyo bureau chief of the New York Times, says that this movie started a debate in Japan about whether the film and others like it were racist, naive, well-intentioned, accurate, or all of the above. And I think basically it is answer, what would that be? E, all of the above. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I would. I also say, like, again, in its defense, it's and like in the defense of Legends of the Fall, you can't take your eyes off it. I think it's a rollicking good yarn.
Do you know when I made this? Might sound a bit odd, listeners, but when I didn't know anything about this movie. It's the first time I've seen this movie, and I came into it, and for the first 20 minutes, half an hour, when Billy Connolly is basically still alive, I thought, is this going to be The Man Who Would Be King in Japan? And for listeners, that's an old movie, I think from the 70s, isn't it, Bryce? We'll have to do it on the podcast, The Man Who Would Be King. It's about two British soldiers in colonial India who set out to conquer a remote Afghan kingdom, and they succeed in doing that by teaching local tribes how to fight like the British army, and thus defeat their tribal enemies, and then unite the tribes.
Yeah, it's based on a short story by Kipling.
But I basically thought that this movie, for the first 30 minutes, I thought, okay, it's gonna be that movie. He's gonna go over and conquer Japan, unite the tribes by teaching them all how to do Western kind of
Stuff.
military tactics and so on. And then I thought, obviously, that The Man Who Would Be King is a problematic film now. If they made it in 2003 with Tom Cruise in Japan, that's massively problematic. But I was thinking, in many ways, this movie isn't that much kind of less racist than that idea, is it? Than The Man Who Would Be King? Do you know what I mean by that? That this movie, okay, it's obviously much more sensitive, perhaps, to issues of colonialism or something, but it's kind of the way it kind of treats Japanese culture. We have to have a white Tom Cruise come over and save everyone in Japan. And at the end, he's the only one that is. They all bow to him. Did you notice that? They all bow to Tom Cruise at the end. They don't bow to the guy who's just killed himself. Tom Cruise is the only person who appears on the front cover of the poster.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in some ways, for me, this film is, if we're talking about levels of racism, this film is more racist than stuff like The Man Who Would Be King. I think Billy Connolly gets killed far too early, actually.
I agree, despite his terrible Irish accent.
Oh yes, he's playing an Irish sort of.
Bizarrely, why didn't they just keep him Scottish? I mean, he's not a real person, so why didn't they just say, "Please, Billy, just do your Billy. Have you ever had a shite in a kimono?" Something like that, Just do Billy, because that would work brilliantly for this movie. It doesn't have to be Irish, does it?
There were no Glaswegians part of the British Imperial military adventurers of the 19th century. I mean, it's very bizarre, isn't it, actually?
Yeah. All right. Okay. So I have beaten this movie around the head with a stick, but the main character, Ken Watanabe, who plays the samurai lord Katsumoto, of course, in this movie, he stated recently, only a couple of years ago, in The Guardian, that this was a turning point for Asian representation in Hollywood. He said, after The Last Samurai came out, Hollywood tried to be more authentic when it came to Asian stories. So maybe, Bryce, we're just looking back on this movie now 22 years later, and we're being a little bit harsh because we have to remember what the world was like 22 years ago. And actually, this was a little bit, we should give it a little bit more slack, maybe. Is that fair?
Yeah, potentially. But it's not as if it's it's not as if it's the first samurai movie ever made, isn't it? Even for like a Western audience. I don't know. I don't. Is this really a watershed movie? I don't know. I don't know enough to answer that question correctly. But to me, that sounds a little bit overblown.
It does. I just want to get one final thing from you about the history, and that's basically this is a story of a feudal system against rising modernization, modern capitalism, that kind of system. And that's kind of echoed throughout many periods of history at different times. I'm thinking of like the Jacobite Rebellion in Britain, maybe in like 100 years earlier, where that was the ending of that clan system in Scotland. And we see this kind of trope a lot in movies between feudalism and rising capitalism. I don't know what my question is, but I thought that was an interesting thing. Basically, it comes up quite often, that theme in movies, and I just wondered what your thoughts were on that historically.
Well, yes. In fact, I believed on that very same theme that this, as I frantically scroll through Wikipedia, the film did inspire a Swedish metal group to who I can't find their name now, but who they released an album called Last Stand, referencing stuff like Scottish stuff like Bannock Barn and like this. Again, that notion of the last stand of feudalism, I suppose.
Yeah.
I've completely lost the name of that band, but who cares? I'm not going to listen to them.
We don't have the budget for a producer. Like Joe Rogan goes, Jamie, bring up pasta sauces in the United Kingdom or whatever random stuff he says. And then this guy just types it in, and they basically spend an hour of a 2-hour podcast slowly reading out Wikipedia or Google entries. That's what we need to do, Bryce. Anyway.
Yeah. Shall I try it? Shall I do some live Googling?
What are you live Googling?
Which was
the band?
The Swedish metal group who were inspired? Sabaton. Sabaton
Okay.
are a Swedish metal group known for their albums and songs about historical military events. Their 2016 studio album, The Last Stand, was partially inspired by this and, like you say, other doomed feudal enterprises,
Yeah.
as mentioned there. So that's Sabaton.
That's what I should have called it. Doomed feudal rebellions always make for good historical epics. Okay, Bryce, let's get on to our list of questions, shall we, that we ask of every movie. I'm delighted to say that I've been playing around on our recording software, listeners, with a soundboard, which allows me to introduce a new section called How About That?
How about that?
This is Hans Zimmer's 100th score, Bryce.
How about that?
Wow.
Next one is a little piece I like to call Splice the Main Brace, which is, of course, that in nautical parlance means drinking alcohol. And so I thought we'd bring out this award basically when we see ridiculous alcohol consumption, like we get in this movie. I think you probably know the scene I'm talking about, the sake scene when Tom Cruise is going cold turkey.
Splice the main brace, Mr. Mate.
There we go. So, Bryce, what did you think of the Last Samurai? Too long, too short for you?
Well, it's an epic. Slightly too long, but it's an epic, so I can forgive it. Was it 2 hours?
2.5 hours.
Well, yeah, maybe I think it could have been squeezed into 2 hours, really.
I honestly have problems with this movie. I can't believe we had to wait 2 hours to get to that battle sequence at the end, which is my favorite scene, just to jump ahead. I think this, by the sound of it, this may be the first ever time I'm going to give a lower score than you on this podcast
Well, hang
because.
on, let's not preempt that because
Okay. All right.
my
Okay.
favorite scene, my favorite scene by far, is Tom Cruise prancing around in his dressing gown, lunging and looking at himself in the mirror, sort of like
Oh, and then the kid sees him.
and like a teenage girl imagining himself as a samurai.
There's also a great bit. Basically, you know the way that Tom Cruise has violently replaced the male paternal figure in the family by killing him, and then becoming the new daddy. There's also a great scene where he does that. I'll just do it to you now. Listeners won't be able to see. He does that finger trick. I thought that was a great bit of stepdadding. I enjoyed that scene where he's bonding with the kids awkwardly.
Bonding sequence. Can I just jump in there on Sude's
Yeah.
corner?
Okay, right. We're all over the place. Yeah, go on.
Oh, do we not usually do this at this stage?
No, well, we haven't done. We're only halfway through favorite scene, and we haven't done favorite character or performance.
Go on then. What's your favourite character and performance?
I say, well, I also wanted to bring up some other scenes. So I wanted to mention that there's a scene in Glory, which listeners will see. That there's exactly the same scene in this movie when he shoots his own soldier's hat when he's training them. Tom Cruise. When he's saying "Shoot me, damn it!" That scene is pretty much exactly the same.
Great Vic of doing paint by numbers cinema?
Yes, I am. Will be for 50 minutes of this podcast. We've also got the ninja attack, which I enjoyed, but at one point I was thinking, how many ninjas have they sent? It's like a computer game. Every time they cut down a ninja, another one jumps through a paper wall.
Like a Jackie Chan movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And, do you know, I've got to say, in this movie, I just felt like there's a lot of scenes in this movie. The pacing is ruined by the ending. I've gone into why that's ridiculous. But there's a fight sequence where Tom Cruise gets cornered by assassins. And then we have this fight sequence and he takes out 4 or 5 assassins. Fine, that's all very exciting. And then we have this bizarre flashback of the fight before he finally finishes off the real assassin. And it completely ruins the pace of this movie. And I kept coming back to this movie, watching it, thinking that there's a sort of enjoyable scene and then something in the scene will ruin it for me. Now, that might just be a personal taste, but I just thought it kind of lurched all over the place. And 2.5 hours really stuck in my craw. Anyway, who is your favorite character, Bryce? I suppose, I don't know. I suppose Billy Connolly would be mine.
I think, I think actually it would be the other character of these Isles, which would be Timothy Spall. Much like Tom Cruise, overacting.
Yeah.
In fact, this is just egregious overacting of Timothy Spall as the
Simon Graham. Yeah.
The greasy go-between.
Who is based on a real historical character who I will also rapidly Google. But I also thought that Ken Watanabe at Katsumoto, the leader of the rebellion, is good, gives good performance. I thought that the Emperor is particularly bad. I'm going to butcher his pronunciation. Emperor Meiji Shikinosuke Nakamura. I thought he was terrible. So I didn't really get on with that. I've got it here, Bryce. Timothy Spall's character is based on Sir Ernest Satow, who's an English diplomat and Japanologist, who apparently is big in Japan, much like this movie, because it actually grossed way more money in Japan than America. It cost an eye-watering $140 million, grossed $456.8 million. A lot of that, most of that, I believe, was in Japan. It's kind of saved it, this movie. So, do you want to do then? What did you do usually? Suits Corner, right? Suits Corner, over to you.
With glee, because it's been a while since I placed Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian in Suits Corner. But if you read this review of this, which is, like you say, 22 years old, which he can't help but, what's the term, which all the kids use today? He can't help but, whilst giving it a really kind of cynical and kind of sarky review, he can't at the same time help but flex his knowledge of samurai movies. So I'm going to.
Yes.
I've never met Peter Bradshaw, no offense, but I would imagine he speaks like this. So if you'll indulge me.
Please.
Of course, while broadly taking as its inspiration the folk memory of Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, recent films about samurai have investigated the peripheral or heterodox aspects of their culture better. Hiroyuki Sanada, who plays a warrior here, stars in the forthcoming and excellent Twilight Samurai by Yoji Yamamata, about a widower and petty swordsman drawn into violence. Then there's Jean-Pierre Melville's Le Samouraï, and Jim Jarmusch's Ghost Dog, which both evoke cold and almost immoral side of the samurai. Paul Schrader's Mishima elaborated on nationalism and fanaticism, of course, and Nagisa Oshima's Gohato even brought samurai homoeroticism out of the closet. There's Peter there, flexing
Wow.
his samurai movie knowledge.
Flexing like Tom Cruise in the mirror.
Yeah.
Wow, very impressive, Peter. Obviously, there's a whole, and we focus mainly on Western Hollywood movies, which means we often don't get to see all of the wonderful cinema from around the world. But I don't know any of those references that you just read out.
I've heard of Kurosawa's Seven Samurai.
Oh, did you say that? I think your audio dropped out for a second there. I didn't hear you say that, but I have heard that movie. I've seen that movie actually a long time ago. It's what a lot of Western movies, some Western movies are based on, like Western.
Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
The Old West. Yeah, that's inspired by, I don't think it's based on it, but that's inspired by the filmmaking, isn't it? Right, so, Bryce, important question now. In all seriousness, what would Brian Clough have made of this movie? Would he have said the Meiji Restoration was the Leeds United of their time, playing unfairly?
I think he would have done. I think he would have warmed to the to the rugged work ethic of the samurai in the face of much more slick and corrupt opposition from propped up by the FA. So yeah, I think he would have probably made that analogy. All right, yeah.
He would have been on the Satsuma Rebellion side. Which part should Mel Gibson, Daniel Day-Lewis, or Marlon Brando play? This is a shoo-in, isn't it, for Mel in the lead role?
Going back to Brian Clough, halftime Satsumas, halftime oranges. Yeah. I must admit, this question always appears entirely redundant to me, Ross, because quite clearly all these lead, like say Mel Gibson, clearly would have played the Tom Cruise role. Well, be it actually, Daniel Day-Lewis would have been playing the samurai lad, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
The more contemplative, cerebral Japanese fella. What's his name? Matsukami.
Yeah, I mean, but basically, I think we'll cut this question because we come up with the same answer every time that Daniel Day-Lewis would give a brilliant performance doing one thing or other. Leads me to the point that Tom Cruise had prepared for 2 years to make this movie, including swordplay training and Japanese lessons. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Tom Cruise is much like Peter Bradshaw, flexing his samurai knowledge here. Tom Cruise is on a mission, like with many of his movies, to prove the bullies wrong. I'm not that little, actually. I'm really hard. I might be small, but I'm really hard.
He's got a small man complex, hasn't he?
Quite possibly.
Is he the Napoleon of Hollywood? So, Bryce, who should do the DVD commentary? Do you know who I'd like to hear from?
Go on.
I'd like to hear from Emperor Meiji, because he doesn't really get a voice in this movie. He's pretty pathetic. I don't know what he was like historically, whether he really was just a figure, and then behind him is basically the government, which is running everything. But I'd actually like to hear from him.
Yeah, maybe we could restore his voice.
Okay. The best companion film. You've mentioned the two I had, which is Dances with Wolves. Oh. And for the first 20 minutes, The Man Who Will Be King. Have you got any other companion films?
Well, like if you like this kind of movie, it's got to be Zvic's other notable effort, Legends of the Fall, isn't it? Because it's essentially exactly the same plot. White saviors, noble savages.
Do you think that he went into the pitch meeting for this and said it's Legends of the Fall in Japan?
It's Legends of the Fall in dressing gowns.
I've got a serious point here. Okay, so best companion film: Last of the Mohicans, The Last Emperor, The Last King of Scotland, Last Temptation of Christ, Last Tango in Paris, Last Jedi. I could go on. Is there something about adding the word "last" into film titles that makes it more appealing? I mean, I'm making a serious point. I think there is something about that people are like, "Oh, The Last." Like the classic is Last of the Mohicans. Nothing to do with The Last of the Mohicans. There's 2,000 of them odd, I think, still in some reservation.
Well, it's the last of that way of life, and I suppose it appeals to the nostalgic film goer, maybe.
Yeah. The Nobel Prize Award for Movie Physics. At one point, Tom Cruise throws his samurai sword over on itself through and into Colonel Bagley, who's the bad white colonel. Felt that struck me as particularly unbelievable. Bryce, what have you got for our Hall of Fame? Have you got the red samurai armor that Tom Cruise killed a man for?
I actually didn't have anything. What is that? What is in your Hall of Fame? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just nothing really struck me. I've got to say the production quality of this movie was strikingly good. I mean, like it looks like $140 million. It looks incredible. This movie, particularly the fight scenes at the end, the amount of extras, everything. It's like Jesus, it's unbelievable. I should note that I think a lot of the fight scenes were directed by the second unit director and not Edward Zwick. Maybe that's why. But it looks quite incredible. Bryce, there's another scene I wanted to bring up, and that's we get another Zwick trope of the good death. There's a mention that when Tom Cruise kills Taka, that's the love interest, her husband, he's had a good death, even though Tom Cruise basically stabs him from the ground. It's not a good death at all, is it? It's basically like a cowardly way to die, that Tom Cruise stabs him upwards as he's standing over him, ready to kill him. How is that a good death? What does that even mean, a good death?
Well, I'm not qualified to talk about the moral universe of the samurai, but it would also appear that it's not a good enough death, that Tom Cruise doesn't have to, in some ways, it seems bizarrely atone for it by shagging his wife.
Yeah. Okay. So I've just got one or two things for Pedant's Corner. The US flag that appears in this movie has 43 stars, but that, as you will know, as a keen, is it vexillologist, flag fan? Yeah. That did not happen until 1891. Yeah. Factual error: the Japanese soldiers are using the cap lock musket system, which only yields one shot at a time. In several scenes, we see the same soldier firing several shots without reloading his gun. Okay, anything else you've done, Suits Corner? So, Bryce, what did you give The Last of the Samurai out of 10? What are your marks out of 10? Sum up the movie for us.
Another Zwick, paint by numbers, predictable, white savior, noble savage, greatly ahistorical Hollywood vehicle. Yeah, I suppose to our eyes today, probably faintly racist and silly. It's quite a silly movie. Having said that, I'll admit I watched it late at night and in a certain mood for this movie, and I think if you hit this movie in the right mood, you're not going to be disappointed. But of course, to get into that mood, you've got to kind of suspend all disbelief. So I'm going to give it overall despite its many problematic aspects, I'm going to give it a 5.
I've given it 4. So this is the first ever time in about 35, 40 episodes I've given it a lower score. I was not in the right frame of mind to watch this. I mean, I really struggled through 2 hours before we get this wonderful fight sequence. There are a few scenes in this movie I really like. I really like that scene in the forest where they're attacked the first time, the scene, where Billy Connolly dies. There are some really well choreographed action sequences. There are some fight sequences. The rest of it, maybe I'm just getting fed up with these 90s movies. I mean, I love 90s movies, but these kind of overly dramatic, overly sentimentalized, sweeping, epic, 2.5 hours long. It really found it tough going. I've got to admit. And I come back to the point that every time there was a scene which I enjoyed in this movie, they found a way of ruining it. And I come back to the assassin fight and the ending of this movie. I think the ending works emotionally, with this large last charge of the samurai, and then he gets knocked off his horse and he does the seppuku, which is a little bit silly. And you think, okay, fine, but Tom Cruise is also going to die, isn't he? And then he doesn't, and it's just it just, honestly, every moment I enjoyed in this movie, there was something, the scene went on too long, or the pacing was off, or we got a bizarre flashback, or they started talking about fighting with no mind, with this stuff that's never explained. And for those reasons, I didn't really enjoy this movie at all. And so I've given it a 4.
That is because, Ross, you have far to go, and mentally I can see that you have not achieved the
Zen state,
purity of the way of the samurai, and so you therefore have much to learn.
Well, Bryce, that was the last of the samurai. Maybe that's the last of Edward Zwick on this podcast. I don't know.
Please God.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks very much for joining me. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave us a comment. What did you think of the movie? What did you think of our breakdown of the movie? We'd love to hear from you. If you subscribe and like, that also helps the podcast. And if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, if you leave us a nice juicy 5-star review, that's something you can do for free, which massively helps. So thank you very much indeed. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Historical Movies Podcast. That's it for this episode of the Historical Movies Podcast. Don't forget to leave us a review on your chosen podcast platform. Spotify and Apple Podcasts make a huge difference to the algorithm. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to leave a comment or a like or subscribe. Thanks very much for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.